Part of what drew me to Yale Law School is that it, as an institution, is a place that really values investing in students and faculty and their ability to change the world and impact the world in which they inhabit and deploy the skills that they have to try to make the most impact. I'm very lucky this term. I'm teaching for the first time ever a course in federal income taxation. It's the first tax class that students interested in tax will take at the law school. And I'm coming at these issues having spent a few years over the course of my recent history working at the Treasury Department, where I was very focused on tax policies. And what I'm hoping to bring to my students is the idea that those building blocks, the building blocks that they're going to encounter at every stage of their careers with respect to the law, the building blocks that they're going to see every time they open up the newspaper and read a story about a particular policy debate, literally all of it is about tax. And it's been really fun to kind of bring that to them. People sometimes think tax is a very technical class and very mathy or approaching it with a certain trepidation. But I feel like once you realize that tax is everything and is everywhere, it ends up being like kind of a revelatory and magical experience. And I'm hoping that it is for my students the way it was for me when I was in law school. In the class that I'm teaching this semester, I am able to incorporate contemporary issues in literally every class because, like I said, tax touches everything. Today, I was telling the students that I have been fascinated by the robbery, the heist of the Louvre, and I've read everything. I've looked at every video, and many of my students had as well. And I was saying how even in these stories that seem like they're like sort of literally palace intrigue about royal jewels going missing, always a tax angle, because the nature of whether or not you have to pay taxes on income that you steal or accumulate from some sort of ill-gotten gains, all of it is taxable, and in fact raises tax questions that are super interesting for us to grapple with. I think just teaching those principles to students, but then also applying them the way policymakers do is they're making contemporary arguments for why you might want to see certain types of reform proposals go through, gives a lot of space for students to engage with stuff that they read in the newspaper with the sort of foundation building blocks that they get from taking a course like the one I'm offering. One of the things I realized when I was in government that I kind of knew before I served, but didn't really grapple with in the same way as you do when you're seated at the table and a part of some of those policy conversations, is the importance of what I had thought of as kind of a relatively technical question with respect to how much certain tax and spending provisions are going to cost the government. And so I kind of set out with Budget Lab with my co-founders, Martha Gimbel and Danny Yegan, who had also worked with me when I was in government. We set out to improve the evidence base and to be able to provide rapid, real-time types of analytics that we know we could have benefited from when we were sitting around policy tables. And we hope that policymakers of all stripes across both sides of the aisle at all levels of government can really benefit from having access to the type of analytical rigor that we're bringing to some of the most important policy questions of the day. I'm encouraging the students to understand that the tax code is a dynamic object. It's not static. It changes over time. Every few years, you have relatively significant changes in the way that the code operates and operationalizes. And those moments give us a lot to talk about in class because the law changes, but they also give us a whole pool from which we can try to derive evidence on the most important policy questions of the day. We knew that trade policy was an area where we wanted to invest significantly in having the infrastructure available to be kind of the place where you would get the most rapid and the most holistic and broad breadth sense of what these tariffs were doing, how we could understand their economic impact, and where we were already starting to see it. And now as we look at the sort of next few months for Budget Lab and the next few years for Budget Lab, our success is going to be dependent on our ability to identify exactly those areas of the economy where we know there's going to be a tremendous need for the type of analytical work that we do, I suspect in areas like artificial intelligence and in areas like entitlement reform, given the looming expiration of the trust funds in Social Security and Medicare, and investments in children and investments in immigration reform. These are all areas where we know that there are going to be very live policy conversations, and our success is going to be dependent on our ability to marshal the type of resources that we have over the course of the last year in order to answer those questions in the most remarkable and the most sort of state-of-the-art way. And we're excited about doing that work, but it is work that is definitely intensive and requires having the right types of resources in place, and most importantly, the right types of people in place to do the work.